Greetings, and I hope everyone are doing well. This is Adina Applebaum here from the Immigrant Finance Podcast, and I am here with our very special guest, Edward, who is going to be speaking about his experience, his family's journey to the U.S., and his work now as a librarian, and really exploring the topic of immigrant entrepreneurship. So, thank you so much for being here, Edward. How are you?
I'm good, good. Thanks for asking. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to just kind of share what I know. Like you mentioned, I'm being an immigrant is kind of like a new identity to me. It's my first year in the US. We've been here for 12 months exactly. We came here in December in 2020. And in my day job, I'm a business and entrepreneurship librarian. So I spend a lot of time thinking about how to help entrepreneurs, student entrepreneurs, or anyone basically. And this is a really nice sort of go in between, between my identity as an immigrant and as well as something that I do as my day job, supporting entrepreneurship. So yeah, I'm really happy to talk about anything that's of interest to our audience or to you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. It's very important, I think, to be talking about these topics with someone who's actually a librarian. I think I shared in the conference I spoke at recently that you invited me to, about how when my husband immigrated here and we were trying to figure out finances, the first place we went was the library, and we checked out all of the finance books they had, and that was really the beginning of our journey to start piecing things together. So it's such an important place in the US for learning and resources. And I'm just grateful to hear your perspective today. I also wanted to kind of orient to the audience how we first met, which is you were not in the US. So tell us where you were and, kind of how you got here.
I'm sure. I thought it was interesting you mentioned that you went to the library when you wanted to find out about finance and stuff. As a librarian, when I wanted to find out about finance for immigrants in the US, I found you as a valuable resource, which is why I was involved in the immigrant finance community. I don't know what you call it now. It's a master class or it's a little kind
Immigrant
of
Finance
coaching
School.
session. Right, right.
Yeah.
So that started my whole journey because I had the idea or had the feeling that a lot of stuff that you read on the internet were not it were just not written for immigrants in general, right? A lot of the stuff about credit were really for citizens, and there were so many kind of complexities surrounding the idea of moving to a new country, which is why I decided to invest in the immigrant finance course, and I'm very very grateful that we were able to cover many things, not just budgeting, but building a credit score and understanding sort of how money works in the US. I guess the backstory is I was living in Singapore and I had gotten a job in the US, and that sort of started the whole journey. But because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to relocate immediately, so I was working remotely from Singapore for about 10 months, and I took that time to sort of learn about it before getting into the US. Getting a car, get opening a bank account. All these things were incredibly difficult because I was not in the US and I didn't have the right papers, and then there was a pandemic going on. So a lot of plans were delayed, and things like that. So yeah, that's how we got acquainted, and yeah, I think the course is really valuable. Even for me as a librarian, I felt like there wasn't enough resources out there, and you were a very valuable resource. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Edward. That means a lot. And so this was back, I believe it was May 2020 that you joined. And it was actually the first group coaching round of Immigrant Finance School that we did, right in the beginning of the pandemic, such a crazy time. And you were actually, I don't know if you know that you were the first student we had that was not in the US who was planning to immigrate and zooming in from another country. So that was really cool. And I really appreciated your questions because I remember, for example, you had specific questions about buying a car in the US because that was
Mm,
obviously going to be an immediate financial need to get to your job when you got here. And so that was just really helpful for me to like think about, that's now a lesson in the modules about buying a car and just
mm.
your contributions to the program. Really appreciate that. Yeah. And so we can kind of jump in now to your expertise. I'd love to start off with how did you get first interested in this topic of entrepreneurship and wanting to come to the US to be a librarian and study?
Um, I can't say that I'm an entrepreneur, but the more I kind of think about this, and I think you reflect that in your writing, and in your course as well. The idea of being an immigrant and the idea of being an entrepreneur has a lot of overlap.
Yes.
The mentality is similar, right? The startup, the bootstrapping method, and things like that, and you know the whole idea about coming to the US and then taking on this identity as an immigrant, which is kind of new to me,
Mhm.
sort of made me think about my history, right? And yeah, I would say that a lot of immigrants are entrepreneurs. So I was just thinking about my grandparents, which I've never met. But they came to they moved from China, from southern China to Singapore to find a better life. Less than 100 years ago. And that's what they did. They relocated in Singapore, and then then my parents, and then me. So yeah, the idea of entrepreneurship is very closely intertwined, I guess, with the idea of being immigrant. I guess I was lucky in that during school, I had to do an internship, and I had a chance to work with a sort of entrepreneur or sole proprietor very closely.
Mhm.
So every day I would see my boss, my internship boss, and he was very sort of willing to share what makes the business. He was very honest about it, and he was also very encouraging to me. I think one thing he says to me, which I'll repeat, I think is very valuable, is that he says that if you work for somebody, there's always a limit as to how much you can earn.
Mhm.
If you work for yourself, as in you become entrepreneur, you do your own business, then there's no limit to the sky.
Yeah.
There's no limit to your earning power. So we still keep in touch, and he's always been encouraging me to have a side hustle,
Mhm.
sort of just in case he says the librarianship work doesn't work out. And I appreciate that kind of input. I always feel like we have to have a side project going on, whether it's for making more money or because it's something that you're interested in. I think having that makes you go out of your comfort zone. And that's something I try to bring to my life, right? I try to be involved in things that allows me to do and experiment new things, and you never know where it's going to take you. Just like I didn't sort of expect to move to the US at all. I was just looking for a job, right? And I was very lucky that I found a job in the US. And I wasn't too, I was open to the idea of relocating because I had relocated before. I worked in Shanghai before,
Mhm.
before this job. So the idea of relocating wasn't so scary. But yeah, the identity of being an immigrant is new, and I just wanted to share this. I feel like it's something that's imposed on you. When I got to the US, or even
Mhm.
before I got to the US, you are now kind of treated as an immigrant. But all my life, I never thought of myself as an immigrant.
Mhm.
Even though Singapore society, generally speaking, we are all made up of migrants, because we have people coming in from different parts, from China, from Malaysia, from India. So Singapore itself is it's a bit like a melting pot. You have lots of immigrants who then stay on and sort of grow their roots in Singapore. And then I don't know. I always ask myself, is it because of my history, because of my past? That's why I'm not staying in Singapore. That's why I'm sort of relocating and moving out, and now being identified as an immigrant in the US. So it's always interesting to sort of think about where you come from, and why you're doing this.
That it's very interesting. I'm not surprised that so quickly, and you're raising very important topics. And my first thought is a lot of it may have to do with the U.S.'s difficulty wrapping its mind around immigration. I don't know how to put it. There's so many tensions and just different perspectives about immigrants, and even though our culture also is a melting pot like Singapore, of everybody is from an immigrant family, maybe we just have a bit of an identity crisis more than Singapore about it. I don't know, but the labeling is very interesting how that played
Mm.
out.
Yeah. I don't want to speak for all immigrants, but the feeling I get is that once you get into the US, immediately sort of you're either American citizen or you are immigrant, right? You can't say, well, I'm just here to see what the US has to offer for a couple of years, and then I'll decide whether I want to stay or I want to go back, right? So there's no kind of gray area in
Yeah,
between. It's like you are either here because you want to be here, you want to move here, you want to relocate here, or I don't know. So yeah, the questions come very quickly, right? Like when you're gonna get your green card, when you're gonna get your citizenship. But most of the time, all of us sort of we are still in a state of flux, right? We're kind of deciding, we're kind of
yeah,
thinking about it. Is this life what I want? And it's not a question that you can answer immediately or you'll be able to answer at all. But the sort of the system or society sort of imposes this on you. You sort of have to make up your mind quickly,
yeah.
and identify and put yourself into these kind of labels or boxes. But yeah.
It's so true. And I think a lot of people in our community will relate to that because we have
Mm.
many students in Immigrant Finance School who are US citizens, but they identify as being immigrants or part of because their parents are immigrants, or they have a sibling who wasn't born here and they just happen to have been born here. Right. So there's a lot of mixed status families. Such an interesting topic. We could talk about this all day long. But I want to get a little bit more into entrepreneurship. So you had this personal experience, it sounds like, with it sounds like this mentor or in your internship,
Mm.
I think you said, who
Yep.
taught you about the importance of entrepreneurship. Were you since then planning to specialize in being a librarian on this topic, or did it kind of happen over time?
I think it's by sheer chance or luck, from the very beginning. So I tell this to people, who ask me how I became a business librarian. So, I knew I wanted to be a librarian. So at the interview, I had choices. They said, we have spaces in business as I think the other two options were art librarian and a math librarian. Just supporting the different departments in the university. And of course, I said art because the art library is the coolest library. And I don't have a business background. I don't have a strong interest in math either. But the business library, the head of business library at that point, he saw my, he kind of liked my background. I come from a management university. Even though
Mhm.
I didn't do management, I did political science and sociology. He said, "Well, you're coming over to the business library, and that's how I got started." And again, I was very lucky. There was a entrepreneurship, they call it a technopreneurship center in the university, and it was wonderful. It was great working with the students, both at the undergraduate level and at the graduate level. So the undergraduate level, the students were very different because they were interested in entrepreneurship. So when I did a library workshop with the students, they would ask many questions. They were eager to learn. So that was the starting point. And one of the interesting things they did was that they had a showcase where at the end of semester they would basically tell others, any student or any kind of instructors what project they were working on, what kind of startup project they were working on. Probably they have like 15 weeks or something to work on it. So I thought, why not bring the whole group, the whole gang over to the library to do it because we needed traffic in the business library as well.
Mhm.
So that's where we kind of started. The crowd was really good. The head of business library liked the idea because a lot of students who came in, it was their first time visiting the business library. They came because they wanted to see their friends doing the
Mm,
presentation for their startup. So it was kind of a win-win situation, and that's how I got involved in the graduate program. The graduate program was fascinating as well because a lot of students were overseas students from the region, and many of them were involved in family-owned businesses. Like
mhm,
they came to do the graduate program because they were groomed to take over their families' businesses.
mhm,
So the kind of questions, the kind of perspective they have are very different. And then you had students who were working at big companies. So they wanted to be what we call entrepreneurs, right? Being an entrepreneur or being innovative at the organization that you work for, starting
mhm.
new projects. Some people call it business development and things like that. But it was a really fun, engaging community to be involved in, and I like to tell the story, but it's not much of a story. But when I was really, when I was in what do you call here? I was in primary school. Here you call it elementary school, right?
Mhm.
I got into trouble with my teacher and my principal because I started selling a newsletter that I wrote. And I was making fun of my classmates, and my classmates were buying them for like 20 cents. This was in Singapore. And I got into trouble because my teacher said you shouldn't be selling things in school and making money off your friends, but there was a demand for it. I remember my dad, we had a photocopier machine in the house. So, I would print it out once and then photocopy, and then, we'll sell it. And then, the teacher had to put a stop to it immediately. Um, but I
Wow.
guess, that's the kind of environment that I grew up in Singapore where, you're not kind of encouraged to innovate, or you're not encouraged to do things because, well, that's not what we do here.
Mm,
So I think, as immigrants, you should be, willing, or brave enough or bold enough to try to, kind of not break rules per se, but try to kind of test the boundaries sometimes, because that's what happens a lot in business, right? You disrupt, or you do something that nobody has, wants to do it or haven't thought of it, and as an immigrant, you bring that outsider perspective, which is valuable.
absolutely. Oh, well, I love so many things you said. I mean, first of all, you said sociology and political science major. Very interesting. And I have kind of similar background. I didn't study business at all. Um,
Mm.
I studied international area studies and urban studies, but basically a lot of like sociology, political science kind of stuff. And I'm also very creative. I had an art background. And for me, the learning about business more recently in life, I have found it to be so creative and in many ways art, right? Because like you were talking about with innovation, when you have a business or you're being entrepreneurial, you're creating from your thoughts and turning them into reality. And I love the story about you with the making the newsletter because you were using your ideas to help people. You said there's a demand and they wanted to pay you for it, right? And there was nothing wrong with that. It's just so interesting because as we get older, we start to have these stories from society about how wanting to make money or charge money is bad. But you were doing it as this innocent child. It was just this natural act. And I think it's a lot of business and the mindset around it is kind of peeling back those layers and stories to just get to the core of like it. There's nothing wrong with sharing your ideas and being paid fairly for it. Right, and you were doing that as a kid, so I just love that. Very cool experiences. So what with all of this great background and experience and the path that's taken you on, what are your views today when it comes to this topic of immigrant entrepreneurship? Anything you want to share?
Before I get to it, I wanted to build on your point
Sure.
about, I know you share this a lot in your course about, being adequately compensated for your time.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that that's something that I'm not good at doing because of the industry I'm in. So I'm in higher education, I'm in librarianship, and we share a lot of things without putting a monetary value to it, right? When you go to
Right.
library, you check out a book for free, right? I mean, you pay taxes,
Right.
but it's free. And I've been thinking about how can I not be part of this, evil, not so good system where people don't get compensated for their expertise and experience.
Mm,
So
mhm.
I just wanted to share this story because I feel like it's a very small step that I can try to do. I'm still not compensated for my time when I do service on a lot of my library associations, but I enjoy organizing events and stuff for my profession. And what you said got me thinking. So recently I was organizing a sort of speaker series, getting other business librarians to talk about something that they are an expert in. And we managed to get a proposal out, to get some funding so that we could pay an honorarium to fellow business librarians who spend 1 hour, 2 hours of their time developing and delivering a workshop for other fellow business librarian as part of professional development. So many times, people are not compensated for that. And I was very happy that, we managed to get the funding so that our peers can be compensated for that. I think that's important in my industry
Yeah,
because, we do too many things that are for
great
free.
stuff.
The entrepreneurship conference that I was involved in organizing, and you as a keynote speaker, I was really happy that we had some sponsorship, some funding that would allow us to pay all the keynote speakers. So I think, being conscious and thinking about that, because I think many times I do lots of stuff because it's, sort of my work, or I'm volunteering for it. But I think if we start thinking about this, we can try to help change the ecosystem or the environment, I guess. It's a
Absolutely.
small change, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
rel I relate to that so much, because in my day job, I work at a nonprofit. I've worked in
Mm,
nonprofits for probably about 15 years almost. And yeah, I mean, I've learned so much. I've thought so much on this topic in that world as I've learned more about business and finances. And now with my team in that role, I'm always like, make sure you take all your paid time off because that's a part of your paid benefits, right? So don't not take time off because you don't want to look like you're slacking. Like that's your right, right? So for anybody listening, just be mindful of this, even if you work in not in a business space, of making
mm,
sure you're being respected for your time and you're taking the benefits that you work for, right? Make sure you get that employer match if you have an investment account with your employer, all of that. And it's also okay to have a side hustle and have other
mm.
things that compensate for you for your time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, fortunate because I had a mentor that challenged me to think about these things. So he says,
Right.
even as a librarian, are there certain skill sets, certain expertise that you can build upon, and if it's valuable, then people will kind of pay you for it, right?
Absolutely.
So he's always encouraging me to start my side hustle. The context is that he's a motivational kind of speaker. He's paid by the hour. He gets paid a flat fee regardless of how many people he delivers to.
Hmm.
So he's always encouraging me to build on that, because he says, you do so many presentations already.
Yeah.
You should build upon it. So I thought that's something, for all of us to kind of think about. How can we, create this environment where, if we are inviting somebody else as well, we can try to compensate them for their time as well. Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing up that topic. I think it's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else you would like me to cover, but I have a list of, not really a list, but a couple of books, because I'm a librarian, so people always ask me for books. So
Yes.
I wanted to highlight just two books that I enjoyed tremendously. They're both graphic novels, so it's an easier read, hopefully. But they're all about the American experience.
Mm.
So the first one, it's a illustrated memoir by a Vietnamese refugee. I think her name is Thi Bui, if I'm saying it correctly, Thi Bui. And the graphic novel is called The Best We Could Do. So it's really about her family and her experiences, sort of being refugees in Vietnam and making that long trip over to the US. And I was very lucky because I think 1 2 months ago there was an author talk, and I managed to attend, and she was on Zoom, and she shared some more about her experiences. So I thought that was really really fun, and meaningful for me as I navigate life in the US. And then there's another one which is written. I think she's Egyptian Filipino.
Mm.
So her graphic novel, the title is called "I Was Their American Dream." And it's really fascinating because I think she either moved to the US at a very young age or she was born here, but she's caught in this in between world because I think her mom is Filipino and then her dad is Egyptian. So I really enjoyed it. Just trying to understand the experiences of other immigrants. I wish I could draw a graphic novel and tell people my story coming to the US, but I can't draw. Um, but yeah, I think this is something that listeners to this episode can think about, right? Documenting, capturing your experiences as well, because I know there's so much going on when you're in the US, or when you're trying to start your own business. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those resources. I'm sure people will really enjoy reading them. I was curious to hear also what you would recommend for new immigrants in the country, in terms of how they could take advantage of the resources at the library. Like, what would be, if you had to give someone a quick overview of all the amazing things available in libraries? And I'm asking because I know in many other countries they don't have free public libraries like we do, where you can check out books for free, or maybe they do, but people don't really use them. So it's such an incredible resource. So how would you, yeah, kind of guide people through that?
Um, Again, I work at a university, an academic setting, so I cannot claim or profess that I speak for the public librarians in my profession. But I'm a user of my local public library, and I'm very grateful to them because they have given me a little sense of community. When we moved over here, naturally the first place I wanted to visit was the library because they had books for my children. I have three young
Mhm.
children, so that was valuable. But it was a very welcoming space as well for me, not just for me, but for my wife and for my children. And I'm glad to say that even 1 year on, they recognize us because we go into the library almost every week. Um, and they'll be happy to share some of the newest books they have, and things like that. But I think for some of our listeners who are doing their own business, or thinking of doing their own business, I think most public libraries in the US, as long as they are well funded, would have a sort of business center. Sometimes they call it entrepreneurship center. Some of the more well funded libraries would even have sort of like a maker space, right? So I think I can say this. I think most public libraries are very open to having guest speakers. So if you have an expertise to share, whether you're a lawyer or accountant, or you have something that you want to share, you should always try to reach out to your local library, or even the libraries in the adjacent town or city or district, whatever it is. I think it's a nice venue if you want to share expertise to a smaller group to start you off, or you want to give back to society, right? You say I know something and I want to share my knowledge because I went through it. I think the library is also a nice place to sort of start that, to experiment, because people are generally forgiving, in the library, whether it's the staff or it's the people who are attending such library events. And of course there's the Business and Entrepreneurship Center. that would really help you in terms of if you need funding, if you need to figure out some tax code or something like that. I think the library generally has been a good resource to point you to experts. They might not be able to solve your problem or guide you per se, um, but they'll definitely be able to go find out for you who do you need to talk to, and sort of point you towards that. And I think that's always very valuable because I don't know, for me, I don't know anyone in the US, no family members here, so it's a really nice kind of trusted place that's free,
Mhm.
right? You
Mhm.
don't kind of need to pay for their expertise because they are there for you as part of your taxpayers' money. So that's kind of like my pitch. I wouldn't say libraries are perfect. Libraries can't do everything.
Right.
But I would say check them out. Always talk to people in the library and see what they can do for you. Not just the local library, but sometimes even in the adjacent town or something to where you stay. Yeah.
That was an excellent overview. I really agree with what you've said, particularly the point you made about how they might not know the answer, but may be able to point you to who you need to talk to or what subject you need to read into further. That alone is a lot of what business development is about, is figuring out what is the question. Like, I have this area that I don't know what to do and I don't know what it looks like. Maybe it's, starting the LLC. Like, you don't even know what an LLC is or why it's important or whether it makes sense for your business or when. Being able to just have a free resource to figure out where can I learn more about this, or what types of professionals should I speak to, is so valuable. So I really appreciate that. I wanted to throw into that many libraries offer English language learning classes for
Mm.
free, and also have computers if you don't have access to a computer. We have had a couple students who have actually gone through Immigrant Finance School at the library on the public
Wow.
computer. Yeah. And then I also wanted to add one more thing, that this was actually how we started our business, Immigrant Finance, was by doing what you just said, was offering to have a free workshop at our local library. It was really just an idea. I don't know if you knew that. I just went up and asked them, and it was this idea in my head, and wasn't really sure how to get off the ground. And someone had mentioned to me, maybe you can give a presentation at the library. You were right. They were very accommodating and willing. And so that was the first actual kind of groundwork for Immigrant Finance School. Was I would do these free presentations at the English language class on basics of finance, budgeting, saving, and it was great. It was amazing. So I would really recommend that on any topic anyone's thinking of starting a business with. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess one quick thing I'll add is that you can do something like immigrant finance course, but if you need kind of local context knowledge, the library would be a good place to tell you, in your state you have to do X and not Z, or you have to do
Right.
Y first. I think the library would be able to give that kind of localized information that something on a website might not be able to cover in depth about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Well, this has been so enlightening to hear more about your perspective. Is there anything else you would want to add that we didn't cover?
No, not really. Yeah, I think I'm good. Happy to help anyone. I guess one quick story I can kind of share for fun.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I've shared this with you, but when I got to the US, I had to buy stuff, right? Because we were stuck in the hotel room and I needed to get stuff, and I needed to get a car seat for my son. Um, and Amazon suspended my account because they thought it was fraud.
Mm.
Because my Amazon account, I've been using it when I was in Singapore, and then now I'm in some hotel room in the US, and it got suspended. And they didn't do it once; they did it a couple of times
Wow.
because it's just a red flag. So I'm always very sympathetic and empathetic to any kind of immigrant stories. I think don't be afraid to sort of reach out and ask for help. In the past year I've been here, I've been asking all sorts of people Americans, non-Americans, for help in the many different kind of things that I do. I'm still trying to figure out my tax returns and
Mhm.
stuff. But yeah, I think the bottom line has always been the same. It's, you always be hopeful for a better future, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but I feel like it's an action, right? You want to improve yourself, you want to get better, you want to be in a better place, and I think that sort of encapsulates part of that immigrant ambition or that experience, right? We want to be in a better place, and we are hopeful that we can be in a better place. So I think, there are lots of challenges being an immigrant in the US, definitely. But always ask, always reach out for help. Don't despair, and you will find somebody who is willing to sort of support you as well in your journey. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. It can be very vulnerable to say and ask for help.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get thinking of all the people who have helped my husband and I navigate when he came here, and other people I know, and it's really important to lean on others when you need it. So thank you for sharing that. I will just mention as a side note, make sure to log back into the course because there's a lesson on taxes we've added since you were in it. So hopefully that will help share some resources for you. And just thank you so much for your time. And I know you're very busy and have children. So thank you for taking the time out on a Sunday to talk with us and share these insights. Is there anywhere you would want to point people where they can reach out to you or maybe follow you on social media, anything like that?
Yeah, I'm usually on Twitter. I think I've been on Twitter for 10 years. So anyone can kind of reach out to me on Twitter to say hi or to share their stories. I'm more than happy to respond on Twitter. I think that's a good platform for me and people in my profession. So yeah, I want to thank you also for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to kind of share. I mean, this is the kind of part personal, part professional, so it's an interesting intersection as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for being open to it. I think it'll be a really fun episode for people to hear. And it was great to see you now 1 year in after here in the US. I remember when you were just trying to figure it out from Singapore. So I'm really happy for you and your family and to see you doing so well. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.
Take care,
Thank you
Edward.
for listening. Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.